Hello and welcome back to the Peace Girls Here podcast. I'm your host, Yelena Pilates. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about nervous system regulation hygiene and how we can create a flow in our day to integrate it in a way that works for us, for everything else that we need to get done in that day. That's the trickiest part, of course, making the time for ourselves, and at the same time, and absolutely necessary to have such a practice where we allow our nervous system to come to a sweet spot when it feels safe, regulated, and just all in all well, so that you can be energetic and be productive into the rest of your day. And you will find out that it doesn't really have to take that much of a time and energy investment in doing that effectively. But before we get into that, let me just follow up on what I was talking about last time. And you might hear some birds chirping here and there because I'm in my office, in my home office, and there's definitely a few nests that those birds made right under the roof. So let's just enjoy the nature sounds. Actually, those sounds are quite nice for our nervous system. Those are going to be a little bit louder that I sometimes would want for a recording, but hey, here we are. We're just dealing with life as it is, that it presents ourselves from a ideally a place of regulation. And here it is what I'm about to do with those birds. Anyhow, the last episode that I recorded solo, and that's what I want to follow up upon, is when I was talking about the systemic quality of that issue that a lot of us face, where we don't allow ourselves to take rest, when we feel pressured all the time, when we feel like every task is urgent. And I'm now reading the book that it's all about that. It's by Thomas, and it's called Women That Work Too Much, that it actually inspiring me to put everything that I'm learning from that book, the inspiration that I'm getting from it, and everything that I have known about the nervous system, because I've been studying for quite some time, into a virtual retreat for busy ladies, professionals, and entrepreneurs. So I'm going to maybe share a few things about that in the end of the episode. But the point is that that book really gave me the language to express something that I already have been known for quite some time, but couldn't really find a way to articulate it. This book gave me the language to verbalize all of the thoughts that I've been carrying around about how much capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy all converge together to create a system that is ultimately not prioritizing connection. What and that is what healthy for our nervous system. Our nervous system is all about connection, but the system that we are living in, interestingly enough, the nervous system lives in a system created by all of those institutions and economical priorities of bigger corporations, government, and etc. That system is ultimately concerned with profit and creating commodities out of people and the services that they provide. And that's a kind of a sad and gray reality to confront, but ultimately is absolutely necessary for us to see what kind of a conditioning we have absorbed from those systems that we're living in, to the point that we internalize that conditioning to the point of creating beliefs about ourselves that ultimately are not helpful or beneficial. Like, for example, when we are constantly comparing ourselves with others and have to do everything perfectly, or else feel like we just are our achievements totally completely equate ourselves with our productivity. That is all problematic because, first of all, it robs us of a beautiful, wild, present, alive part of ourselves, which is our biology, physiology, which is all of this creation is here for us to have experience and savor and to be present with. When we're just in this receiving kind of mode, let's say on the nature side, we are looking around and taking it all in. Our culture is not really prioritizing Zen or saying it as a valuable, because when we are spending time resting out and about in nature, we're not creating any products. And knowing you ladies and myself, I know that a lot of times when I'm resting or supposed to be resting, I catch myself, my mind goes back to my business and I call it creativity and I call it inspiration and ambition, but ultimately there is a line where I feel like all of us need to draw and really be able to drop it all away and really focus in the here and now and enjoying life for what it is, because hey, it passes by so quickly while we are thinking about the next goal that we need to accomplish, which is again the system that we're living in that has given us so many beautiful technologies and comforts. But at the same time, with all of that, it's devalues the very much human beingness that we all are and makes us into those human doings that just have to be doing things all the time to feel worthy. And I gotta tell you right now, and after that, I'm just gonna move on to the actual topic of the today's session, is that it's easy to get caught up in that human doing all the time. There's indeed a lot of things to do, but it's up to us to draw the line and really dig deeper and realize that the human life and the meaning of human life is so much more deeper than our to-do list. And I'll leave you with that and move on to the nervous system regulation flow and how we can integrate it, because I ultimately believe the nervous system regulation is a pathway to reclaiming that human being that we are, to start living in that place of regulation and safety where that beingness is allowed and is welcome to be. We spend so much time in a survival state, which is all about mobilizing our energy to get something done. And nothing wrong in getting stuff done, don't get me wrong. But when we spend all of our time there, we start forgetting that our nervous system needs those touch points when we touch deeply into the restful energy, into the energy of beingness and receiving. And our bodies are cyclical, especially female bodies, as you already know. And perhaps you might not be someone who's bleeding anymore, maybe you're past that point, but even then, our bodies go through those cycles monthly. And then all of the bodies in the world, not just females, have other like circadian rhythm, ultra ultrarian rhythms. I'm forgetting now the actual term for it, but if you really start looking into how we operate as embodied human beings, you will see that we are not the machines that we are encouraged to be, that produce, and never rest. No, cycles that we are living in are all about creating those times of intentional play and rest and just being, so that we can recharge and restore and reclaim that part of our humanity. So, how do we move towards that while still living in a system that is urging us to be productive, to be achieving? And again, nothing wrong with that encouragement. The trick is to delineate where is that is coming from, the within us, that desire to have a great impact into the world, which is of course a very meaningful and fulfilling thing, an activity to pursue, and where there is a moment when we are just keep going and going and going because of maybe a fear of uncertainty, since the system that we're living in doesn't necessarily create for us any safety nets. We have to create them all ourselves. We might be, well, stuck in fear. And to be honest, fear is a great motivator, but it's not the only one. And if it's your only motivator, I think it can be quite draining. On the other hand, sometimes we are so wrapped into wanting to create this amazing impact into the world that we start equating our impact with our sense of worth. And there is nothing wrong in being proud of what you're doing and what you have accomplished. But again, there is a line when if we have a day of rest and play and we feel like we gotta feel either guilty or we're just like not productive enough or something like that, there is a sign that there is something to look into within your own conditioning, because ultimately there's something so healthy about allowing ourselves to play and rest and really take it in as a requirement, a birthright that we all have, that can coexist with that beautiful desire of creating impact and a ripple into the world. So sometimes we get stuck in a cycle of that survival and ambitious kind of forward movement energy that is all consuming. And for us to really rein it back in and create intentional times of rest and play, we first need to set boundaries with that overpowering either fear or ambition of both. And we can get stuck in this cycle of like catch 22 kind of way, because for us to regulate our nervous system, we need to make time, even if it's just time to take one or two intentional breaths throughout the day. That is still a moment of pausing and deciding, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. That's a boundary, mini boundary that you create in regards to the rest of the things that you're doing before and after that breath, that you need to allow yourself to take those recharging breaths. Or when we want to create time for morning or evening kind of self-care time, which is a more of a chunk of time when you really let go of any of the task and spend quality time with yourself, important quality time with yourself. That's what I was going to say. For us to be able to do that and use those times, whether throughout the day, whether in the AM or PM, to regulate our nervous system, we need to create boundary with a fear, with the ambition, and also with people in our business, in our life, because we need to communicate, whether to ourselves, whether to others, this is time is for me and I'm gonna get it. Let's say for the AM time, we might have to communicate with our partner or our children or our emails that, hey, I'm gonna get to you and start like be very attentive with you in that time. Give me 20 minutes and I'm gonna be back fully on, fully present, but I need this time for myself. Sometimes we need to, as I said, say to ourselves, sometimes with the people in our life, or to our inbox that we need to come back to after we have done our self-care. So there is a conversation to be had with either ourselves or others. And also, we need to create a boundary throughout the day with ourselves to really pull away from the screen if we're working on the computer a lot and really take the few deep breaths or maybe go for a walk. That is also the boundary that we need to create and put out there consciously, deliberately, with our workload, with our own ambition or the fear that drive us to overwork sometimes. But for that to happen from this authentic place, from a safe place within, because for us to set a boundary, we need actually feel safe about doing so, feel good about doing so. We need to regulate our nervous system into that place of safety. So there's where catch 22 is happening. To set boundaries, we need to have semi regulated nervous system, and to regulate our nervous system, we need to set boundaries. There is no clear answer on how you step out of it. For me, to be honest, what happened is when I noticed myself feeling unhappy, like deeply unhappy. And while everything in my life was kind of okay and going well, and here I am in Hawaii in the paradise. I think I mentioned that event in the previous episode as well, but I was there like freaking out when I was actually supposed to savoring my day. And that was a wake-up call that I took really in and said, no more. I'm done. I'm gonna just take the time for the self-care that I need, and I'm gonna do it. And from that passionate commitment to my self-care, to my happiness, I was able to set the boundaries that I need. And I'm still always in the process of doing that, especially with myself and my husband and my garden and all other obligations that I have into the world. So, however you exit that cycle will look differently. Sometimes that the wake up call that we all need, like noticing ourselves starting to burn out, starting to become cynical and unmotivated and uninspired about something that we started for ourselves in the first place, like when you start your own business. Watch out for those signs. Notice when is to turn inward and reflect upon what you're observing about the way you are, the way what you feeling and your thoughts are, and what are those signs that telling you that, yeah, there is no time like right now to actually start taking care of yourself. So at that point, you can start thinking about the first one smallest thing that you can do to bring that regulation in your system. It doesn't have to be this fully blown, well scheduled regimen of like self-care, like, oh, this is what I do in the morning, this is what I do at night, this is what I do throughout the day. That's kind of ideal, to be honest. Like when we do something in the morning, when we do a little bit throughout the day, and we also take time in the night to maybe journal or reflect or just check in with ourselves and see where we at in the end of the day, what's working, what's not working, how we can do better in terms of taking care of ourselves the next day. That is a practice. It's a process. It's not just something you, oh, I'm going to take a bubble bath and then I'll be done. No, it's becoming part of your life and eventually becomes a second nature, that kind of a taking care of yourself, especially when you start seeing the benefits. So the first thing that you do is to think about one smallest 10 minutes thing maybe that you can do in the morning or in the afternoon or whenever else you have time in your schedule. When can you squeeze those 10 minutes, maybe of yoga, maybe of breathing, maybe a walk, a chunk of time that will allow your nervous system to really exhale, knowing that you have those 10 minutes, that you don't have to like get to the next thing after a breath or two. No, 10 minutes is a really good start, maybe five even, of perhaps laying down and listening to a guided meditation so that somebody else can guide you through it if you know that your thoughts might be prone to racing or trying to think about the next thing you need to do. Get some guidance. Put some YouTube video on or a guided meditation. I actually have a bunch of them on Insight Timer that are free for everybody to listen at any point. You just need to have the app, and I believe the account with them is free. That's what I do when I feel a little rough around the edges and I can't necessarily just do breathing meditation. I need a little bit more verbiage to accompany me into that calming state. So, Insight Timer, I will put it in a show note, that link to my account there so you can get those meditations. And it starts right there with those 10 minutes. And maybe after you do create that 10 minutes practice and try it for a week, just try it and see how it works. Maybe you have to move it around. Then you can add some, or maybe sooner if you can, but all in a spirit of not overwhelming yourself, doing as least possible when you start so you can add later. Later, the next week, you can add pauses, gentle pauses throughout the day. A lot of times it's easy to combine them when you doing something else. Let's say when you're eating food, my favorite thing to do, if nothing else I can do throughout the day, is to say a prayer. Like really take my time, take a breath, exhale everything else that I have been just doing up until this moment and really feel grateful. Sometimes it can last like 3 seconds. That's all I can spare. And then I feel like, oh, I need to just like eat it up and keep going. But that is already built in into your day. Or my other one, and you might laugh at it, but it has been working great for me. When I go use the restroom, I have to sit down. I'm a lady, and I actually take an extra breath when I'm doing that. I'm really just like allowing to sit myself to sit and feel support of the toilet sit. I know it's hilarious, but it's ultimately what have been working for me, because otherwise I have sometimes hard time just pausing without anything else, just like sitting there and staring in the window. That can come not so easy if you like running around all day and doing things. For us to really rein it back into a state of regulation, we need to do it a little more gradually. And sometimes those other little habits that you create around other activities that you do can be just that, what you need. And in the evening, eventually you can also add some kind of a checking in practice, journaling about how your day went, how those deep breaths that you have taken been beneficial for you. And, and if that's all you can do, that's great. Sometimes you might take a day to really dive deep into learning about your nervous system regulation and other things that you want to learn about in terms of how to help yourself feel better. And this is when you can pick up a book or do a virtual retreat like the one I'm going to be doing in October, and really take your time to really contemplate and reflect, because understanding of yourself and your patterns does take that introspection. It does take us more than just like 10 minutes in the morning, because first you need to read or listen to somebody else sharing that information. Maybe they will also give you a practical exercise like what I'm going to be doing in a virtual retreat in early October, and really apply it. If you don't want to wait until October, or if you don't care about my virtual retreat, that's fine. What I really recommend, if you are curious about nervous system regulation, is to get the book called Anchored by Deb Dana. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and that book is amazing. Anchored. Everybody should have it. Everybody with a nervous system out there should definitely study it. And it's very not dry, not dry. It's very opposite. It's very engaging and very practical, and it's also very soothing, just the way she writes. I just all in all recommend it for those deep dives when you want to take the time to understand yourself. And I'll have to tell you that yes, we absolutely must make time for those once in a while. Again, thread tread gently when you approach such things, when you introduce something new into your life, like a self-care routine, nervous system regulation. We don't want to overwhelm yourself with too much to do. We don't want to overwhelm yourself to the point that you feel like you're failing at that, because that is also counterproductive. Start small. And lastly, what I want to say, even before you look into the nervous system regulation, what is really important is to look into satisfying the needs such as for food, for sleep, and etc. All of those foundational rhythms that we engage in, that should come, at least in my opinion, before you add anything else. Sleeping, as you already know, is extremely important and underlies everything else. So this is why I'm really advocating for all of us really first look into how can we improve our sleep hygiene, maybe try to find a way to sleep a little longer. And that's get tricky. I understand sometimes for the self-care, what it means to do it in the morning is to wake up 15 minutes before well, you normally wake up at, to include the self-care in your day, to make time for it, which means going to sleep a little earlier. So again, you need to experiment and find what works for you. But I'm just trying to stress the point that before you add any kind of fancy nervous system regulation technique, really take a look into, are you hydrating? Are you eating the meals that you need? Are you really sleeping enough? And etc. And upon that foundation, you can add and tweak your regimen to include more of beautiful techniques that out there developed at this point. So, lastly, in terms of boundaries and nervous system regulation techniques themselves, because I haven't really touched upon either one of those things, next episode going to be about setting boundaries, and the episode after that will be about specific nervous system regulation techniques and putting it all together. I basically gave you a version of putting it all together in this episode of like creating your nervous system regulation hygiene as a practice that you can include in every day, which consists of doing something in the morning, taking a few deep breath and maybe other short, sweet practices throughout the day, and doing something at night, and ultimately allowing yourself making the times for deep dives throughout your year when you actually really take the time to dive deeper into studying yourself, what works for you, what doesn't. And ultimately, this is what been holding me together throughout many years of my hectic life. And there might be many different versions of what it looks like for you. I just encourage you to start small and start with your sleeping and eating, and also tune in the next episode because I'm going to be talking about how to learn when is the good time to set the boundaries. Actually, let me correct myself. When is it absolutely important to start setting boundaries? What kind of signs you need to watch out that are telling you, or, oh yeah, like this is about the time I need to start making effort to fill my cup first. Also, how to do it with other people when you need to communicate a boundary in terms of our time, how to set a boundary with ourselves because we need sometimes to communicate with a part of ourselves that is very ambitious that we actually need to rest. All of that will be in the episode that is coming out next. And the last episode in this series before the virtual retreat will be about the nervous system regulation tools. So basically in the last episode previously to this one, and then this one and the next two, this basically the information that I'm going to be covering in a virtual retreat, just to give you the idea of the flavor of that retreat. Of course, I'll be sharing more that I can possibly share within a short episode. And plus, there will be a community of other female entrepreneurs and busy professionals that will be part of that. And we're going to be, first of all, sharing our experiences and establish the common humanity within all of us and inspire each other and ultimately become each other accountability partners. There will be an opportunity for that in the end of the retreat that we will finish up with taking all of this information about the systematic pressures that we under in terms of capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy. How can we navigate that in a way that we can still create that regimen for ourselves, set boundaries, and learn specific nervous system regulation tools and do it in a way that is supported by other people. Ultimately, I want all the participants to find nervous system regulation buddy among each other, like we have business besties. So in the end, I will invite everybody to pair up, and also I will hold weekly or maybe bi-weekly Zoom sessions where we all can come together. All the participants of the retreat can come together in the next couple of months after the retreat and check in with each other about our progress and how we're doing, what's been working, what not. Ultimately, all of that will be concluded, that kind of process, within a Facebook group that I'm going to create, which is going to be free, where all of those participants will be continuously getting support from that point on, even when we're going to take a break from our video sessions for December and probably January too. So the idea is I want you to learn how to take care of yourself better and also be supported by other female entrepreneurs and business professionals that are going through the same thing, and cheer each other on this journey because it's tough and we need to be reminded by fellow human beings that we need to be investing ourselves at all times. Everything else in our life depends on it. So if you want to check out the details for this virtual retreat, there's going to be a link in the show notes to this episode. I'm going to make a note about it so I don't forget. I'm writing it down as we speak. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to email to me the topics that you want me to cover in the sessions to come. Hello at My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy. Wait a minute. Hello at mybloomingheart.com. And if you feel like this episode is valuable and helpful, please share it away with other people who need a little bit of an inspiration to create a self-care regimen, especially nervous system regulation, hygiene for themselves. And I'll talk to you next time. Thank you again for tuning in. All of your support is so important to me. Thank you for all the feedback that you've been providing to me. It keeps me going in my own practice, and I'm forever grateful for that. So thank you again so much for tuning in. Have a beautiful the rest of your day.